Thank you for coming to the Lunch Bunch for September. We have our presenters from the Brook Status of Women's Council that are going to be speaking on the Sara project and touching on Take Back the Night. So I'd like to welcome Paula and Valletta. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
And this session will be recorded, so we'll keep the Q&A portion towards the end. Once the main session has been done, recording stops, and then we can ask all of our questions from there. So without further ado, we will get the presentation started.
I'm Valletta Colburn. I am the coordinator for the Sara project, and with me is Paula Shepherd-Thibault, and she is the executive director of the Brook Status of Women. And as Quinn has already mentioned, we're going to talk about Sara Day and then a little bit about Take Back the Night.
So the Sara project, which stands for Sexual Assault Response and Advocacy. So who do we serve? We serve as anybody over the age of 16 who has experienced sexual assault or thinks that they may have experienced sexual assault. Some people aren't sure. And we operate a crisis line, which is talk and text. 24 hours, we have a number of volunteers who assist us as staff to make sure that there's someone available to answer that phone at all times. We, everyone who calls us is believed. We start from the premise that we believe survivors. It's not about, are you sure? What were you doing? How did you contribute? It's okay. We believe you that this happened. Callers are given trauma-informed call or center for support, and that might be anything from information and resources support, assistance with system navigation. It could also mean accompaniment to services. So whether they need somebody to go with them to the hospital, to the police, to campus enforcement, or wherever they would like to report that. Sara's always available, as we said, 24/7. You can reach out directly after sexual assault, after a few days, after a few months, or even a year, 2 years later. So we do get some calls that are historical in nature, where they're still seeking some support around that. The service is intended for the Brook Bay of Islands area, and accompaniments are available in this area, which is why we kind of laid it out that way. However, we don't ask callers where they are, and we have had callers from outside of that region who've reached out. And really, if they're on the phone and they're seeking support and not an accompaniment, we can provide support to pretty much anybody. And so why do we do this? Because research shows us that having crisis support is one of the best ways for communities to address sexual assault. When survivors have access to support, especially in the period shortly after sexual assault, there's significant improvement in both the short and long-term outcomes for that individual.
What is sexual assault? Sexual assault is somewhat different than what you're going to see on TV as rape. So sexual assault is any kind of unwanted sexual activity. It can be touching, it can be kissing, it can be anything physical. Whereas rape is going to talk about actual sex.
Penetration.
So sexual activity is only sex if it's consensual. Otherwise, it's sexual assault. They're mutually exclusive. You can only have one or the other. There's no such thing as non-consensual sex. That doesn't exist. That's sexual assault. So sexual harassment, on the other hand, is any kind of sexual activity that doesn't involve touching. And statutory rape has to do with the age. For general terms, you're looking at age 16 in Canada as the general age for consenting to sexual activity, but there are some exceptions. 14 and 15-year-olds can choose to have sex with people within 5 years of their age, and 12 and 13-year-olds can decide to have sex with people within 2 years of their age. There are, though, activities that even at 16 someone can't consent to. At age 16, you still can't consent to anal sex. That's age 18. You can't consent to sex with someone who is in a position of power. However, a person in position of power, it still may not be consensual sex regardless of age, if there's an abuse of that power.
And even with those 5 and 2 year caveats, again, if it is someone with it who has a position of power, if there is manipulation or coercion that's happening within that relationship, then it is non-consensual.
But with anal sex, apparently, if you've gotten married before 18, it's still
Yeah.
okay. Did you know people who experience sexual assault are unsure whether their experience was actually sexual assault? When we speak to children in schools, a lot of time they'll tell us that, yeah, so I didn't want to, I said no, but then after, you would if you loved me, or please, you really want to.
We've been dating for a
Yeah.
while. I've said yes before, but I didn't really want to this time. So yes,
There's a lot of confusion of
a
what
gray
counts.
areas that people are unsure about.
And I mean, there's a lot of, yeah, I didn't want it at all, but I didn't fight back, so it wasn't sexual assault. If there was no consent, it was sexual assault. And it's okay. It really doesn't matter. Someone doesn't have to know that they've been sexually assaulted. They don't, they don't need to have evidence to go to the police to call. They can call even if they haven't experienced it. They have questions. Does this count? Is this consent? Is this not consent? My friend had this happen. Does that count? They can call and we will believe them and support them.
So why is Sarah important? So you may work with individuals who have experienced sexual assault. You may already have worked with people who've experienced sexual assault, either in
You
your
will. You
professional
have.
or personal life. And it's important for you to know that it's not their fault. The only fault that sexual assault is ever of is the one who has perpetrated sexual assault. There are ways to help. So that's also why it's important that we have Sarah, because we need additional resources in our community to deal with this issue. So Sarah is the type of support that is there, whether somebody wants to make a formal report, whether they don't, whether they just have questions, we are there. And there's always a volunteer available. And we know that rape is caused by rapists and does and can happen anywhere that there are people.
So the problem's huge. Like the estimated number of people who will experience sexual assault in Canada this year is 600,000. What our thought is that's probably pretty low. The number of people who are going to experience sexual assault and don't even know that they can't answer questions on a Stats Canada survey that, have you been sexually assaulted? Well, no. So you're never going to get those real statistics. Statistics we have right here, again, are probably more to do with the university. In school, young people, so between 16 and 24, that's the time. If you remember the LGBTQIA+, your percentage of probability has gone way the heck up. You're a disabled person, your percentage goes way the hell up. If you're Black, Indigenous, person of color, again, your chances of experiencing sexual assault are far greater than the general population. Men experience sexual assault too, 1 in 10, something like.
1 in 12, depends on what stats you look at.
Oh yeah, and that's the nice thing about statistics. They all say something different, even if they've researched the exact same thing with the exact same population. It still happens to men, generally young men. By the time a male hits puberty, their chances have fallen drastically. As they continue through school, there's still a decent chance. And if they decide to go to university, their chances are 5 times more likely than similarly aged men not in university. Even for men, the likely person to be the aggressor is another male. There are women who commit sexual assault, but it is the minority. And the thing is, so going back to people not realizing, a lot of women who commit sexual assault are they're never confronted with it, because most people are like, well, couldn't have been sexual assault. She was a woman.
He could have fought her off, or physically he responded to what was happening. That's still sexual assault if it was not consensual. The other thing to let you know is that Sarah is available to all genders. So anyone can call our line.
Our volunteers are also all genders.
So what exactly is consent? The easy way to remember principles of consent is to think about fries. So we always want consent to be freely given. So no manipulation, no pressure. You want someone to say, yes, this is what I want. We also need to understand that it's reversible. Even if you thought you were going to say yes, if you did say yes early on, you can always say no at any stage. You can say no. So you can remove your consent. Informed. So you need to know what it is that you are agreeing to. You know, is it okay that I kiss you? Yes. Is it okay that I touch you here? Yes. Is it okay if we do this? Yes. If you are not sure what is happening, it is not informed consent. You know, communication has to be a big part of consent in any type of healthy relationship. And this just goes hand in hand with that. E, enthusiastic. Let's face it. Hell yes, goes a hell of a lot further than, I guess, if you really want to. You know, who really wants that? You want someone to be into it. You want somebody to be ready, willing, and, you know, want to go to that next step with you. So look for the enthusiasm. And again, your consent has to be specific. And that's again about, at this time, in this moment, this is what I am agreeing to. It does not mean that I'm agreeing to tomorrow, next week. I'm not agreeing for somebody else. That I'm being specific, that this is what is okay with for me right now. So yeah, surprise, easy.
What might you experience in disclosure? The really easy disclosure, the really awesome disclosure, the person that you can super easily help is the person who says, last night I was raped. Can you help me? That's awesome, but it's also very, very rare. Most people are not going to come out and just make disclosure. Should someone come to you and ask you for help because they've experienced sexual assault, step one, no matter, what, is believe them. Following step is to find out what they want to do. They've had choices ripped away from them. Right now, what they need is choice. And whether you think they should go to the police, whether you think they should go to the hospital, whether you think they should go to their parents, whomever, lay out those choices, but the choice has to be theirs. Of course, that changes a bit if you're talking about a disclosure from a youth, because of course, everybody has the duty to report.
Often the disclosures won't be so clear, but it might be something like, you know what, last night was really bizarre. I was watching a movie with John Doe and all of a sudden he was all over me. That guy doesn't take no for an answer. So again, they're not saying that they said no. They're feeling like things were a little out of control, that it's unexpected. They're not talking about the fact that they consented to what happened. So again, our first step, believe them. Even if perpetrator is someone you know, someone you've heard about, someone you may think is in a position of prestige or status or anything like that. It doesn't matter who the perpetrator may be. We believe the person who's experienced sexual assault. Let them know that what happened to them was not okay and it definitely was not their fault. And again, provide them with choice. Ask them what they would like to do. This isn't about imposing our own values about, well, if I were you, this is what I do. Like, what do you feel ready to do at this moment? These are your options. And it's absolutely okay if we decide to do none of them.
The other scenario is people not having a clue what happened. Waking up the next morning and being like, that's funny. I don't remember going to sleep here. Don't remember my clothes being missing, or just that icky, weird feeling. So it's possible that they've experienced a drug-facilitated sexual assault. And the surprising thing is it's not roofies. It's not the thing that is slipped in your drink that most people are going to experience. What most people are going to experience is alcohol being the main cause of the drug-facilitated sexual assault. There's two kinds of rapists who commit sexual assault through drug-facilitated sexual assault. First being an intentional rapist and the other being opportunistic. Intentional rapist is either going to ply the person with drinks, they're going to be buying and buying and buying, or slip something into their drink, then take advantage of them. The other is going to be at a bar or a social gathering and keep an eye out for the person who is, feeding themselves the drink. They're going to remove them from their group and take advantage of the situation.
in both these situations, you'll often find that first it's about getting them to a point of incapacity. And then it's about separating them from whoever we need to be, so isolating them. Okay, in a drug facilitated sexual assault, the steps are again much the same. We are going to believe the person. We're going to ask them what they want to do, and we're going to offer options. You know, asking them what they want to do is really important because they've just been violated. They've had choice taken away from them. So we want to build in as many choices as possible, but also know that sometimes people are going to feel overwhelmed and may need time to process before they're ready to do anything. They're also dealing with their own feelings around it. Sometimes those feelings include things like guilt, shame, fear of not being believed, fear of victim blaming. Because unfortunately, those are all part of dealing with sexual assault because we've been taught we don't talk about it. If it does happen, you must have done something to invite it. People aren't going to believe you. And there is no help available. You made your bed, you lie in it.
But what were you wearing?
And what were you wearing? Why did you invite them back? How much did you drink?
Why didn't you fight?
And those are all the kind of things that keep people from coming forward. So having someone believe them right off the bat is incredibly important, and then providing them with options for what they can do.
It's also okay to let them know that it isn't a rush. If they want to go to the hospital and have a SANE kit done, then yeah, you've got a 72-hour time period,
Yeah.
and the sooner you can get there, the better. However, for speaking to the police, you're actually probably better off not speaking to the police immediately. The traumatized brain is not going to remember everything altogether, and it's certainly not going to remember things in a linear fashion. So as time passes, you're going to get a better idea of what actually happened as things come back in little snippets, and your senses will come back first. But your story further down the road is likely to be more accurate than your story the very next morning. So if a person doesn't know what they want to do, the only thing sitting on the clock is the same exam. So they have to make that decision in short order, but everything else they can sit and think and make a decision that feels right for them.
And the other thing is that they can have a SANE exam done and still not press charges right away. They have time to decide whether or not they want to go forward with a criminal investigation. These samples will simply be stored. They'll be stored with their MCP number. So again, the police can't just access it because they don't have access to that system. Only those within the hospital will have access to it. It is stored at the RNC building here, but again, they can't just, it's a number. It means, and until someone decides that they are ready to move forward with charges or an investigation, it will not be opened.
So Emerge and SANE nurse also will not call the police until we're talking about, again, if it's a youth under 16 and there's a due date report. Most often, you're going to find a person who's not saying anything. They're very likely to be very tight-lipped about what happened because people feel shame and feel guilt and are blaming themselves. But so the same as any kind of mental health first aid that you've ever come across, it's keeping an eye on, that's weird. That person doesn't, dress the way they used to. They don't go out and do the things they used to. They, are making major changes in their life, and they haven't publicly shown any reason why they'd make changes. And it's the exact same thing. It is okay to ask people, hey, something seems different. What's up? And maybe nothing. And that's okay, but it's okay to ask.
Ending sexual assault will not happen overnight. And it is going to take a cultural shift where we start to talk about these topics. We start to break down some of the myths and some of the stories that we've been told around this. And we start talking really frankly and openly about it. But people can make a difference. And people who experience sexual assault have better short and long-term outcomes, as we said earlier, when they're believed and supported. And that's what the Sara Project really is intended to do.
So the Sara line is confidential and free. except for times when the nudity report comes into play. We don't take note of names or any kind of identifying information at all. And so if someone were to receive a call, they're going to do a report that they received a call, the basics of what it was, the when, the where, the why. No name will be given, maybe initials, possibly. And really that's so that if we're subpoenaed, they can have what we have, but
It's going to be.
it's going to be as confidential as possible.
Yeah.
The call is free, assuming that you're in the Corner Brook Bay of Islands area,
Really.
or you
Yeah.
have, Newfoundland-wide calling or nationwide calling. And yeah, it's 216-HELP.
Take Back the Night is an event that we've been hosting for a number of years. It is actually the oldest worldwide movement to stand against sexual violence. It started in the 1970s and it started in Europe as part of a large convention happening at the time. It spread to North America, and Canada had its first Take Back the Night rally in March in 1978. The name honors the history of the protest, which really they protested for the right to walk alone at night without fear of being harassed, sexually assaulted, or otherwise harmed. We recognize now that obviously in the beginning, for many, many years, this march and rally was for women only. Again, looking at statistics, we know that most of who will be sexually assaulted will identify as female. But we also know that they're not the only ones. So there's also been a movement amongst many groups, including ours, that now includes everyone as part of their march. Because sexual violence can happen anytime, in any place, to anyone. And we keep the original aim to carry on that daring spirit of those who paved the way for this. Our event this year will take place next Friday. We hope that all of you will come out. This is the event where we get to be in the community and we get to be loud. We get to make noise. It really is about making our presence known, about being visible. And it is about taking back the night and debunking all those myths about why we should be afraid of the dark. About what is hiding in the bushes, what bumps in the night. This is about reclaiming your space. Sadly, we know that most sexual assaults are perpetrated by people we know. And the most common place where sexual assaults actually happen are in our own home. So this is a chance to get out and try to debunk some of those myths